I'm here with John Greene from Purdue University, who's joined us to talk about his research in interpersonal communication. So thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Good. If you could tell us a little bit about how you got interested in interpersonal communication and found your way to the field and the sorts of things that you're interested in people's communication processes.
When I was an undergrad, I bounced around from major to major and really couldn't find my niche. And my junior year, I said, well, I'm just going to take 6 classes. I took a philosophy class, a literature class, a English lit class, and just happened to take interpersonal communication and just fell in love with it after 2 years of not being able to find my spot in the university and major and all those kinds of things that people fret with. Fell in love with it. The kinds of questions that we ask in interpersonal I found fascinating. So it took me a while, but best thing that ever happened to me.
Good. And so what sorts of things in interpersonal communication are you interested in?
I initially, when I went to grad school, was interested in the nature of cognitive processes. What goes on in the mind that allows us to say the things we say, to produce the nonverbal behaviors that we produce. And for the last 30 plus years, that's what I focused on. I developed a theory as a PhD student, action assembly theory. Action assembly theory is a theory about the nature of what's stored in long-term memory and how is it stored there, how is it retrieved and utilized to allow me to say something I've never said before, think something I've never thought before. The whole idea of creating something completely new was something that really excited me. And I've been studying that same essential question, how do we think something new for my entire career.
And how has that evolved in your thinking?
The theory itself has evolved. Any good theory is dynamic. Sometimes I think we think about theories as something that's static. Here it is, and that's what it's always been. But action assembly theory has been a dynamic theory. It's morphed and grown, and we've taken the theory in different directions over the years. We've studied a number of different phenomena. We've studied skill acquisition. Why are some people more interpersonally skilled than other people? Action assembly theory helps us understand what's going on when you get better as you work at something. We've studied a phenomenon we call creative facility. Creative facility, there's some people who are just quick on their feet. They've got a snappy comeback. They've always got, they're glib. They've got something to say. There are other people who think of something really clever, but it took an hour to think about that thing. You get in an argument with somebody, and 2 hours later you think of what you should have said. Well, you can't really call them up and say, oh yeah, listen to this.
Here's that zinger, or I should have said that.
Whereas there are other people who, the people we call creatively facile, who just have this ability to come up with it right there on the spur of the moment. So we've used action assembly theory to study creative facility. Most recently, we have taken action assembly theory as the foundation for what we call the study of transcendent interactions. And I'm really excited, my students are really excited about, you have these interactions sometimes that are just incredible. You connect with the other person, it seems like you're on the same page, you're finishing each other's sentences. It's like catching lightning in a bottle. When they happen, and they don't happen all the time, they can be pretty rare, but when they do happen, they are memorable, they are energizing, they are the most wonderful instances of interpersonal communication.
If you could, tell us a little bit about the key findings that you've had in your program of research.
Well, talking about the research that we've done on the theory of transcendent interaction, the newest, most exciting stuff that we're working on. This is just over the last year. This is fresh out of the oven types of stuff. One of the things we've done is ask college students, undergraduates, about their experiences with these magical, transcendent types of interactions. And I had some expectations about what we were going to find when we just asked people to report about these kinds of studies, and they completely, or my expectations were completely wrong, which is the best kind of science, because you discover, well, I got these hypotheses, they're wrong, and that's the way you learn. If your hypotheses are confirmed, I didn't learn anything I didn't know already.
So no fun to be right all the time.
Exactly. So when you get surprised, well, that's a good thing. I had thought that these are going to be interactions between opposite sex undergraduates on a first date or first meeting where you have this, electrifying conversation. What we find is they typically occur in established relationships, friendships. They're not typically opposite sex relationships, which surprised me. They are, again, same sex relationships rather than romantic relationships. And I thought there were going to be a substantial number of online interactions. Virtually none of them are online. 2-3% of these wonderful interactions that people have reported, virtually always face-to-face. Another thing that we found in these initial studies is that there is a small percentage of people who report never having had one of these interactions. Most people can identify at least one instance of this kind of connection, electricity in their life, but we do have a handful of people who can't relate to that experience, who've never had a transcendent interaction.
Hopefully they will at some point.
Because they are wonderful when they happen.
It's a great experience. So what would you say is the significance of this research that you've been doing?
Part of understanding transcendent interactions is because they're just inherently fascinating. But I think when you come to understand transcendent interactions, it sheds light on all of our interactions. Imagine this. Imagine that you studied the perfect free throw form. Well, understanding what made a perfect free throw would help you understand the ones that you miss and where did you go wrong.
Sure.
So if you understood the nature of transcendent interactions, it helps us understand, well, what happens when things go wrong?
Why aren't all of my interactions that wonderful?
Exactly. Even the abysmal, the strained, the difficult.
Right.
So the hope is we're not just studying this tiny sliver of human experience and interpersonal interaction, but we believe it's going to help us understand the entire spectrum of our experiences.
Do you have ideas for where you're going to take that as
Well,
you continue
some really
to
exciting
research?
stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're trying to do now, we've run a couple of studies to this point, is try to create the experience in the lab.
Okay.
Because these things are rare.
Magical moment.
Yeah, it makes it hard to study. But on the other hand, it's kind of like if you understood life, well, could you create it in the lab? Well, if you understood transcendent interactions, maybe you can't create them, but maybe you can approximate them in the lab. So we've developed some new laboratory techniques for getting people right up to the edge of having this connection with another person. So that's pretty exciting. I can't wait to see.
Create the conditions in the lab that could lead to that.
And the way we do it is we use a confederate
Okay.
who already knows. So you can imagine, boy, it seems like we're really on the same page because we're really clicking, because it turns out the person on the other side of the barrier there knows the answers.
They know just what to do to make it feel special.
Exactly. So that's pretty exciting. Part of the way science works is you develop theory, but the other side of the coin is you have to develop ways to test the theory, and oftentimes you develop new paradigms to get at what you want to know about.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting direction. What recommendations do you have for undergraduate students who are majoring in communication to take what they learn in classes like interpersonal communication and apply it to their careers or their relationships in real life?
One of the things I would suggest, even while they're still in school, while they're still in their undergraduate years, is to work with a faculty member if you get the chance. I think if they approach a faculty member and indicate an interest, they will find that more often than not, that faculty member is going to welcome the opportunity to mentor and work with a person. That's how you learn the ropes. So one of the things is let your if there's a professor that you're interested in the kinds of things he or she is doing, let them know it. Ask them if you can help. Post-undergraduate days, one of the problems with interpersonal communication is it's hard. We get lots of book learning, but it's hard to apply in real life. So you learn strategies for handling interpersonal conflict. And the first time you get in an argument with your boyfriend or your spouse, out the window. Absolutely out the window. So the way I guess I would challenge people to think about what they've learned in their classes is in the moment it can be hard to do those things. It takes effort to learn to do the things you've been taught in your class You can do it, but it takes effort, it takes practice in order to bring those things to bear in the moment. In retrospect, though, in reflection, after an argument, the skills and the things that you've learned about interpersonal communication give you a chance to step back. Oh, I see what went on there. So we know from the research, it's hard to take what you've learned in your classes and actually apply them. But that doesn't mean that you can't use them retrospectively, the things you've learned retrospectively, to step back and have an appreciation and sense of what happened in that interchange. So the kinds of things that you're learning in your classes, try to apply them in the moment, but certainly you can apply them as you look back on it an hour later or a week later or whatever.
We'll learn from your mistakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have a terminology. You've learned a set of concepts that you can use to understand what's going on in your life.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Greene's research, you can read about him in Chapter 8 of your textbook.